All right, everybody. So, hey, I'm back. You can turn your excitement down a little bit. I know it's very exciting, but I'm going to take you through the rest of our CSS section for Bistream Academy. So, at this point, you should have something that looks a little bit like the Baby Yoda site here that Shelby built with you. It's probably got your content in it. You probably don't have exactly the same stuff that she does. But it's pretty basic. We've got some cool colors going on. We've learned how to make things different sizes and things like that. But we're going to start today with a concept called the CSS box model. Doesn't sound very exciting, but if you understand this, it's going to help getting your site exactly the way you want it to look much, much easier. So let's go in. So we got our cute little picture here, the box model. We got our kitty in the box. Who doesn't like cats in the box, right? So let's define it first. All HTML elements can be considered boxes, all right? Just like when we're writing our HTML, we put things inside of other things. Boxes go inside of boxes. Always think about it as a box. It makes it a lot easier. So in CSS, the term box model is used when talking about design and layout. It's really just a box that wraps around everything. It consists of a few elements. We're going to go through them one at a time. But it kind of in backwards order here: margins, borders, padding, and then your actual content. All right, so let's look at what this looks like. So here's a little diagram here that you've got to kind of show you what this looks like. All right, so we have our content here in the center. Now that content can be anything. It can be text, it can be images, it can be a video. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever content we're putting on the site. So then right outside of that, we have our padding. Now we're still inside the box here with our padding. And then we have our border. Border's pretty self-explanatory, right? And now we're still part of the box. And then we get to margin, which is outside the box. It's pushing things away. So, like I said, I like to always think of it really exactly like a box. Like, you know, the most exciting thing you get in the world, an Amazon box. So here, let me show you. We're going to go back to the cat thing here a little bit, but this is not the greatest quality picture ever, but it was the best I could find. I spent like a half an hour looking. That's all you get. So we have our cat here. Our cat is the content, right? So this is so ridiculous. Our cat is the content. So it's taking up a certain amount of space in the box. Now between the cat and the actual sides of the box, we have padding here. We have these packing peanuts, right? Now, what happens if I start adding more packing peanuts between the cat and the box? Well, we're not going to make the cat any smaller because that's animal cruelty. But we can make the box bigger. So we would have to start stretching out this box. Now, it's cardboard. It doesn't stretch. It's a metaphor. Just keep going with me, all right? So if we added more padding between the cat and the box would get bigger to compensate, to allow for that. How about that? Okay, and then we have next on the outside here, we have our border. Now in this case, we have the border, which is really just the edges of the cardboard. But in CSS, we can make that cardboard, the edges of that cardboard there, as thick as we want. We can make it different colors, different styles. So that's going to add to the overall size of the box as well, right? Because if I make this cardboard 2 inches thick, obviously the box is bigger, right? And then we have margin, which is outside the box. So now let's imagine 6 of these boxes lined up next to each other in a grid, right? The margin is how much each box is going to push away from the other boxes, how much space it's going to force in between. So if we had another box here, if I put some margin in between there, instead of them being right up against each other, they're going to be right, there's going to be space in between, okay? So if I go back to our diagram again, I think it's helpful to kind of keep that image in your head. An Amazon package with something in it. We've got our padding, we've got our border, we've got our margin, and then we keep going from there with that. Okay, so let's kind of get into that a little bit more. We'll start with our padding. All right, so it's the space between the border and the content. These are our packing peanuts, right? And we kind of highlight it here in green. Notice, again, that the padding adds to the overall total width of the box. The more packing peanuts we shove in there, the bigger the box has to get, right? Because we can't squeeze our content down anymore. The content is our content. You're not going to make the text take up less space, right? It takes up as much space as it takes. So how we define that is like this. There's a few different ways to write this. There's so bear with me for a moment as we look at this. A lot of CSS properties have what we call a shorthand, and then sort of a long way of writing it out. So when we say just padding, that's kind of a shorthand where we can define the padding on all sides of the box at the same time. So if we say padding 15 pixels, that means there's 15 pixels of padding, there's 15 pixels of styrofoam packing peanuts around the entire box, right? All sides are exactly the same, no difference. But we can also add a little dash top to that padding. So our declaration is now padding top is 10 pixels. So now what we're saying is add 10 pixels of padding, but only to the top of the box, okay? Or we can define all the sides at once and give them different values. So we've got padding 10 pixels, 5 pixels, 3 pixels, 5 pixels. So we wrote out what this means. 10 on top, 5 on right, 3 on bottom, 5 on left. We can add that up however we want. Now, the easy way to remember which is which, because if I put these in a different order, it's going to be, there's going to be different padding on different sides, okay? So I want you to think about like a clock. So with clock, if we start at the very top, when we go through the clock, we're going to go clockwise, which I think I'm going the right way. We'll see. I don't know if my camera's flipped here. We go from 12 to 3 to 6 to 9, okay? So we go top, right, bottom, left, top, right, bottom, left, just like we have it written out here, okay? So anytime we have a declaration that we want to write like this, when we're talking about different sides of that box, of that element, we're always going to go top, right, bottom, left, top, right, bottom, left, okay? So let's kind of see this in practice. Well, not in practice yet. So this is just a little bit more explanation about how this works out. So we can write it in 4 values, top, right, bottom, left. We can write it in 3 values. To be honest, I always forget how 3 values works. I always forget that this is right and left. It's top and bottom, and then right and left is one number. I never use it personally. It's just what I do. 2 values, though, I do use all the time. So we can say this is 10 pixels and this is 30 pixels. That means the top and bottom is going to have 10 pixels. The right and left is going to have, top and bottom is going to have 10 pixels. Right and left is going to have 30 pixels, right? And then we went over the one value. Okay, so let's. I think we're going in here. So we've got an example here of what happens when we set a different number on for each side, right? So we have 10, 20, 30, 40, right? So we have 10 on the top, a little bit of space here. We have 20 on the right, twice as much. We have 30 on the bottom, and we have 40 on the left. Now, this image doesn't really make it look like there's too much of a difference between 40 and 30, but you get the idea, right? So we can set that however we want, and it's useful in all kinds of different scenarios. Sometimes you need to set it just on one side or another side, and make it look exactly the way you want it to look or the way it's supposed to look based on the designs you're given, something like that. So we're into the coding section here for a second, but let's back up. Let's not quite get there yet, because let's do a little practice on this. So we're going to flip over to our code, and let's pick an element. So let's go back to Baby Yoda, and let's take a look at, let's see here. Let's take a look at this, okay? So we have our little list in this dark green box down here, right? And we can see that the text is like right up against the top and the bottom of the box. See that? And it looks a little janky like that. We want to give it a little space, give it a little room to breathe here. So let's go in here and let's find that in our HTML, because we need to know what to target with the CSS, right? Hey, look at that. Here is our list, all right? Now, we don't have a class on here or anything. I'm going to kind of look at my HTML and say, hey, do I need to add anything to this? Do I want all of my unordered lists to have this? If I'm building an entire website where I don't know where else I might use a list, maybe not. In our case, we only have the one list. I'm not too worried about it. So we're going to go over to our CSS. And I'm going to find, hey, look, I already have a rule for my UL, right? So I don't need to come down here and write UL blah, blah, blah. I can do that. It will work. But then you have all kinds of repetitions and it gets really hard to manage. So we're just going to go up in here. So let's start with the easy one. We'll say padding 40 pixels. Okay. And let's see what that does out here to our site. We got a lot more room here now. You see that? We got a lot more space on the top and bottom, a little bit more on the left and right. And the reason for that is because the way the lists work is that these bullets actually kind of stick outside of the actual UL, so they're kind of into the padding a little bit. So if we can play around with that. Now look, if we go 40 pixels, let's say 100 pixels, what is that going to do? All right, so if we look back at our slide here, we've got one more here, 2 values. So we've got top and bottom and right and left. If we have 2 values, right? So if we go back here, and I'll get rid of my little 9 there, we have top and bottom and left and right. So let's actually look at that. Hey, look at that. See, we've got 40 pixels here, and then we added 100 pixels here. Now, if this text kind of kept going and going and going and going, we would hit the 100 pixels padding over here on the right side. In fact, let's give that a try. Let's mark up our HTML a little bit more. So we'll just go ahead and copy a whole paragraph here, and we'll drop it right in. How about this one here? He's caring and helpful. All right, and then we'll go and look. See, now you notice it broke. It didn't keep going to the edge, right? It comes down here to the next line. That's because our padding is pushing it down. It's taking up space in the box, and it's kind of shifting the way our content has to display. All right, so let's go back over here. Now this video, we're going to have a few spots where I want you to pause and code. I want you to try these things out. When we're dealing with this kind of stuff, the best thing to do is just to play with it and see what it does. It's a really good idea when we're dealing with padding to use a box with a colored background color on it, because you can see it move and you can see it change a lot more easily. So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause the video here in a sec. We're going to add some padding to a few elements. Remember, you can write out padding left and padding right, padding top, padding bottom, if you want to do just one all by itself, or we can use a shorthand where we define each side. All right, so go ahead and pause your video, and I'll see you back here in a second. All right, how was that? It's kind of fun to play around with, right? You can see things moving and changing size, and it's you can kind of see the possibilities start to pop up of like, ooh, I can do this, and I could add this behind an image, and it gets a lot of fun. So let's keep pressing on. Border. Border is one of those ones that can seem really boring, because, hey, I'm just going to put a line around the edge of the box. But you can do a lot of things with it. When you get really crazy with CSS, you can really kind of hack this to do a lot of different things. But we're going to start with just the kind of basic. We're just looking at the edge around the box. We talked about that's that cardboard on the edge, right? So we can just specify the thickness of that cardboard, the thickness of that border. We can also decide its color and its style as well. All right, so we have our shorthand here where we're saying just border. I'm going to add a border. How thick do I want that? Well, for this border, I only want it to be 1 pixel. All right, what style do you want that border? I want it to be solid. All right, and what color do you want that border? I want this, which happens to be the hexadecimal code for just plain red. We have another one here where I say border top. So this border is only going to show up on the top, right? That makes a lot of sense. I want it 4 pixels thick though, so a little thicker, and I want a dotted style, and I want it to be this hexadecimal code, which is just straight black. And then we can have 2 different. We can put them right on top of each other. I want on the top and I want on the bottom, and I can put that in there. Now, can you write anything you want here for the style? No, absolutely not. There's only a certain number of options that we can have. So if I don't know if Shelby showed you this earlier, but let me show you this. So if I want to say CSS border, I'll get rid of the box. We're just going to search for CSS border. W3 Schools is an excellent site for some basic information. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say CSS border property. All right, so let's click on that and let's see what it says. It gives me some examples, and you can click the try it yourself button, and it'll open a new tab, and it'll give you some options here, right? But what I am interested in right now are the options for border style. All right, so it tells me that the default is none, but I can actually go in and click on border style and get more information about just that property. So I can get more information about just that property, right? So we have a few options, and you can kind of see them listed here. We have dotted, solid, double, and dashed. All right, so if we go over here, and let's try this out right here on W3 Schools, okay? So these borders are both dotted. If I say dashed, and I hit run, you can see it change. And that's where you can start to play with it a little bit and kind of get things to look the way you want it. If I say double, we got the double border, all right? And otherwise, the most common one, of course, is just going to be solid, where I just want one solid border, okay? Let us go back to the slides. We'll keep pressing on. So other properties, we kind of went over that. We've got the width, we've got the style, and we've got the color. I want to tell you how thick I want it, what style I want it, and what color I want it. You can specify them all separately, just like we did right here, if you want. And there's lots of different reasons why you might want to do that rather than put it all in one. Or we can do it all together in the shorthand, like we did right here. Border 1 pixel solid, and then red. And that's usually how I end up defining it, because usually when I'm writing a border, it's all together like that. I just want to say it and get it over with. But we can break it up however we need to. All right, so here's our last chance to code for this video. Okay, so I want you to find an element. I want you to try adding a border to it. Try different styles, different thicknesses, different colors. Try putting it on just the top, on just the bottom, on just the left and right, on, mix it up. Like I said, the best learning tool you can do when you're learning CSS is to play with things. Change numbers, see what happens. Change a word, see what happens. Maybe it completely breaks. Maybe you get something you never expected. And that's the best feeling when you figure something out. You're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I could do this. This is so cool. All right, so go ahead and try that out, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.